Thanks for coming to our fourth Te Hiku or Te Ika Amoe Kāhui AfL PLD webinar, which I've called The Good, the Bad and the Me, unpacking a little of the AfL aspect of students as owners of their own learning. We'll start with a karakia. Whakatakata hau ki te uru, whakatakata hau ki te tonga, kia mā kina ke uta, kia mā taratara ki tai, e hiaka ana te atakura, he tio, he huka, he hauhu, tihei, mauri ora. An important consideration in teaching and learning is reducing cognitive load, and an easy win here is to keep certain routines the same so students know what to expect, which I'm modelling here with the format of these sessions. So, as with the previous sessions, we'll start by looking at what the theory behind the aspect of assessment for learning, which today is students of owners of their own learning, is, followed by the process of one simple strategy. We'll then look at the enablers and barriers to success with this strategy, which if you've seen the previous 3 sessions, you'll recognise many of them as the same throughout. Then finally, we'll spend some time answering questions and planning how you will use this with your ākonga in your kura. The most important decisions are made by students, such as whether they engage in the thinking, the learning, and if they respond to feedback. Students should be active in their learning, and they should be more tired than us at the end of the day. If students are owners of their learning, then they're able to self-regulate, know and understand and use the best learning to learn strategies for the task at hand and to set their own learning goals and plans for achieving them. Daniel Willingham asserts that memory is the residue of thought, and so we need to support students to be thinking about the content, process and products, the what, the how and the why at the appropriate times so that they can make decisions about their own learning throughout the learning process. Activating students as owners of their own learning is a key aspect of assessment for learning and is intertwined with several of the other 4 aspects of assessment for learning. Clarity around the learning through clear learning intentions or questions and success criteria, modelling and provision of examples and non-examples is essential if students are to be effective owners of their own learning. Our Te Hiku o Te Ika Amoe muri whenua iwi aspirations are clear about how important this aspect of assessment for learning is, as are our own Kāhui Achievement Challenge focuses. Great teaching creates cool, well thought out and cleverly planned activities that lead to engagement and thinking on the intended content and learning. Assessment is essential as it bridges the gap between what we do as teachers and what the students learn. Formative assessment in the classroom provides us with this information regularly, day to day, minute to minute, so that we can constantly reflect on our teaching practice and the next steps to improve outcomes for our ākonga, us and them. Activating students as owners of their own learning supports us to teach in a way that aligns with the concepts of with them, for them, rather than to them. The more active students are in their learning, the more clarity they have around their learning, the more decisions they make about their learning, and the more likely they are to accelerate in all areas of their life. This is supporting the metacognitive side that we want to grow to get active, not passive learners in our rohi. The diagram on the left highlights the importance of building talking, active classrooms where students are regularly engaged in discussing and creatively applying what they've learned, reinforced with Bloom's taxonomies on the right-hand side. The visual on the right by Dr. Erica Warren demonstrates the value of cooperative learning to allow students to cement learning into their long-term memory. If we think of active learners in terms of a traditional waka crew, there are many important interconnected roles. As a kaiako, we often take the roles of kaihotu, the person who gives the commands and leads the paddlers, maintaining the rhythm and coordination of the paddling, and often with a kai whakatere, the navigator responsible for steering and guiding the waka, skilled in reading the stars, the currents and other natural signs to lead the waka to its destination, which is the essence of assessment for learning or formative assessment. Our ākonga commonly take the roles of hoia or kaihui, the paddlers or rowers who propel the waka, responsible for the physical power needed to move the vessel. However, we need to prepare our ākonga to take on different roles in the future, where they may become the kaihotu or kaiwhakatere themselves, or the kaiurungi in charge of steering the waka, the tohunga, a spiritual advisor ensuring the spiritual protection of the waka and its crew, the rangatira involved in decisions about the waka's voyage or purpose, or even the tauihu, the carver who designs the intricate carvings on the waka. So the strategy we're going to break down today is called traffic lights, which some of you may already be familiar with. The traffic lights are a simple yet powerful way to support students to begin to take ownership of their learning using a familiar concept. Even though we don't have many traffic lights in the far north, most of our students are aware of what the colours mean and find the concept easy to transfer to their learning, particularly if their classroom is already built with a growth mindset rather than a fixed mindset. Generally, the colours mean the following when directed towards self-reflection of learning, whether it's on content, skills, or emotions towards learning. So green means I could teach this to someone else. The pace is going well for me. I can help you. I'm feeling good about my learning. Orange means I'm nearly there, but not 100% confident. I think I might need some help, maybe from a peer. I'm feeling a bit stuck or frustrated at the moment. And red means I'm unclear, you're going way too fast, I really need help, I'm in the learning pit right now, send for help. There are various ways to create the traffic lights. In some classes I've seen coloured cups that can stack and stand on the students' desks, which are really easy to see as you wander the room or from the front for you and other students. I quite like to combine the colours with multiple choice cards and give each student their own set to be responsible for, which they can also personalise. They're fairly easy to see if students are using them to show where they are in their learning, as they're completing activities independently and as you wander the room. In between the cups and cards, you can make folded cards like a nameplate, and they can also be stacked on top of each other to show which colour the students are feeling at the time. He iti te mokoroa nāna I kati te kahikatea. The mokoro grub may be small, but it cuts through the kahatia. At the end of a lesson or activity, students reflect on their learning and indicate their level of understanding by selecting a colour, green, yellow, or red. This allows them to recognise their own progress and areas of difficulty. This is one of many different ways that students can use traffic lights in their learning. So self-assessment and reflection is probably one of the most important aspects that we need. By encouraging students to self-assess, the traffic light strategy promotes student agency. So students take charge of their own learning journey by identifying areas of strength and weakness and advocating for what they need. ākonga place their cards next to them, showing red, orange, or green facing up, and teachers and peers can quickly scan to see who needs help and respond accordingly. Traffic lights are also really useful in goal setting and planning. So this is a simple way of teaching students how they can respond if they're stuck or if they've got what they need to do next. So after self-assessment, students can create an action plan. If they're red, they might plan to ask the teacher for help or to revise specific topics. If they're on yellow, they might plan to review with a classmate or complete more practice tasks. And if they're on green, they can go and help other people. It's a really useful tool for whole class formative assessment. Teachers can periodically ask students to show where they're at using the traffic light system during a lesson or activity. So the students hold the cards up physically, and this provides immediate feedback to the teacher on the class's overall comprehension, allowing the teacher to adjust instruction accordingly. And it might be in the moment, or it could be for the next day or the next lesson. Kaiako can also encourage ākonga to actively solve problems for themselves. By using the traffic light strategy, both teachers and students benefit from a clearer understanding of where learners stand, and students are encouraged to take control of their own learning processes, fostering critical thinking, reflection, and decision-making. So as I mentioned previously, the enablers and barriers are very similar for any of the strategies we're using in assessment for learning. It's really important to pre-plan how and when you will use any new activity like traffic lights in the lesson, so that you're not just doing it on the cuff, especially if it's something that you're not familiar with as well. It's really important to do it with low stakes, fun things at first, so that students get familiar with the strategy and it doesn't really have too much of an emotional connection for them. So you could create some questions where they literally just respond with red, don't like, orange, don't mind, and like, and green for like. You can come up with ones that are relevant for your students. Really important to model with students, and it's useful to do it with confident students first, who you know that don't mind reflecting on their learning, and students that are good role models for the rest of the class, or ones that you want to be good role models, and you can even prep them beforehand before you do it with the whole class. It's also really good to do it with students with buddies first, because then it's also, again, a low stakes way, and they're not doing it in front of the whole class, because we're always trying to build that growth mindset and get students to realise that the more they can reflect on their own learning and be honest about it, the more likely they are to improve. So again, as with any of these strategies we're discussing, it's also really good to just try and use it as much as possible as you can at first. This links to the barrier of giving up as if it doesn't work the first time. So anything we try first time is likely not to be super successful. So give it a good few goes for at least a week or two to see whether you would like to continue with this strategy. I think I've found myself over the last 20 years of using this strategy that if you give students their own set of cards that they can own and personalise, this gives a higher chance of success. And they quite like to draw faces on them, which helps with the affective side of the learning as well. So if you've got any questions, as always, please get in touch. Or if you'd like any extra support as a whole school around how best to use and apply this, then I'd love to hear from you. But I'm going to pause the recording now after our karakia for any questions that we've got on the actual webinar, and to give an opportunity for you guys to plan how you're going to use this and how you're going to practice this in your class. Anuia, anuia, anuia ki te uru toku nui. Kia wātia, kia mama, te nākau. Te tinana, te wairua ki te ara tangata. Ko ia rā e rongo, whakairehia ake ki runga. Kia tina, tina, hui e, tāki e.